The tree Yannick's working on is a prostrata that was grafted with Kishu Shimpaku about 18 years ago by Tom Wong. So it's all yours.
Super. I also have an assistant, Matthew, who's 25 years old. He's a student of Fred Miyahara, and he will be assisting me. So I want to thank you all for inviting me here to see what my work is all about a little bit. I will try to explain as much as possible about how I work, because I work sometimes different than others, and I want to explain a little bit about that. So this is a prostrata juniper that was grafted 18 years ago by Tom Wong. Quite a nice trunk, very beautiful tree. I also want to explain a little bit about the history of bonsai in Japan and how it changed and how it influenced my styling with that and how the way I work. So in Japan they started with linear classical school, and these were the very beautiful bunching trees. And actually, when bonsai started out in Japan, they didn't really have any rules, but it was during the war when the American military came with their wives. They wanted to learn everything about bonsai, so then rules started to appear in bonsai. So they started with the linear classical school. These were very tender, beautiful, pungent trunks, and the length was very important. They were very tender, and the foliage clouds were very, very small as well. Then they started to do some philosophy about it, and they started the volume classical school, which were very big trunks, and volume was very important. So these were very big trunks, very low, really fat trunks, and the volume was the most important thing at the width of the tree. So it was like a triangular shape of foliage, and you didn't really see the depth in the tree when it had any depth. Then they started to apply these rules and mixing them together. And they had the neoclassical school, and the neoclassical school is what they, does everybody know what Tashagauri means?
No.
No? Okay. So they started to making bonsai out of 3/3. I could have drawn it a little bit easier, but there are no markers. So they made bonsai out of 3/3, and 1/3 of the tree was a Tashagauri. And Tashagauri, that was the base of the trunk and the first branch. And this part of the trunk has to be visible, okay? Then 2/3 of the trunk have to be covered a little bit, but you have to make a picture frame around the most beautiful movements of the tree to make this stand out. And then 3/3 will be made out of your apex, okay? So the first part had to be visible. Then there was a guy in Japan called Masahiko Kimura, and he started the contemporary bonsai art. And contemporary bonsai art, he was like, you have to follow these rules or these guidelines, but you can break them. Because if you have a very beautiful Yamadori with a lot of movement, and you have a very interesting branch that has a lot of character, but it's in a curve, would you cut it?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
Why not? Because it's beautiful. You would take out the character of the tree and you would make a 12 in a dozen tree. So we always need to try to make something more beautiful and more special. And I think bonsai is also a little bit an own approach. And you have to tell your story about the tree, and the tree will tell a story as well. And we need to make a compromise about that. Okay? So Kimura said a little bit like, okay, can I use bad words here?
Sure.
Okay. Fuck the rules, and you can do whatever you want a little bit. In the beginning, in Japan, they were very conservative about this, and it's also because Kimura, he started to be an apprentice in bonsai from age of 14 or 15 years old, because his father died at an early age, and he had to make a living for his sisters and for his mother. So he started also after his apprenticeship, which lasted 11 years. He didn't have a lot of money, and he started to make bonsai out of quite cheap material. But he made special things, and that's why he's now one of the famous ones in Japan, actually. Okay. So then I'm also going to tell a bit about how I work. Some professionals, they make you wire all the trees and stuff like that. I don't work that way because for my aspect in the commercial way, it will not be very good for me, but for you guys, you will save some money, okay? So some professionals will make you wire all the trees. I first think about what's the best trunk line, which primary branch we need to wire with the next branch, and then I use alternating branches, and I use one basic style for this. So I use, for instance, I can show you with some wire. I use informal upright, so Yogi style, as a guideline to make bonsai more easy. So I'm going to do it very extremely. So how does an informal upright look? Yogi style. As shaped, okay? When we have it when we take a Yamadori tree in nature, and I'm going to make it extreme, when the leaning part is quite severely like this, the curve goes severely back as well, if you follow the rules, okay? So here's my curve, or corner. Where will my next corner be?
2/3 of the length of the first one.
Half of the, yes. So that would be more or less here, okay? Where would the next one be?
Half of the second.
Half of the second, okay. That's great. And the next one, half of the third, okay? More or less like this. If this would be the size of my thumb, what would the thickness be of this one? Half of that, half of that, half of that, half of that. Okay? And that's what we call taper. So taper in bonsai is very important. So the first thing what we always need to check is the root base of the tree. Then we're going to check how the taper is and the trunk line is of the tree. And if we know these things, sometimes we still need to bend, so we need to bend the trunk line to create balance into the tree, okay? And when we have this, so this is a very extreme Yogi. It doesn't look beautiful, but it's to show you how it should be more or less, okay? If this is a trunk, this is the apex, okay? And the apex should be in the middle of? Yes, in the middle of your nebari. And that means a tree should turn around like the world does. What does the world turn around its axis? Yes. So if you follow the bonsai rules, they should turn around the axis, okay? Then we have taper, we have everything. What do we have in every corner?
Branches.
Branches, okay, that's correct. So in every corner we have branches. If I would be a trunk and this would become a branch, would it be the same? Would it be the same? Yes.
Smaller.
It would be smaller, that's true. But if I would be a trunk and this would become a branch, then it would be the same. So we have a primary branch that's tapering, and we have our secondary branches that will be in every corner more or less, and then our tertiary branches. So I have a rule that's called the 2 by 2 by 2 rule, because we need to create taper, and the primary branch needs to split into 2, then it needs to split into 2 again, split into 2 again, split into 2 again. Okay? And that's for a reason. Will a shoen ever become a shoen? Will it stay a shoen?
Not forever.
Not forever, it will grow out. The big tree doesn't matter, but sometimes the big tree we need to cut. And that's why I use alternating branches. Because then I have to use less wire, because this branch will grow out and out and out. And if I cut them back through these alternating branches, I can maybe cut back to here, and I can use this branch and this branch, use one wire, bend them back to create the foliage cloud again that I had before. Okay? But these are guidelines, okay? So, if we see this tree, what would you guys do with it? Well, you can come up front as well if you want. I like demonstrations to be interactive. So, what would you check? That's not necessary.
No.
No, thank you. What would be the most beautiful trunk line for you guys and why? Would you make a cascade out of it? or something else, lean it like this. Come on, people, tell me, tell me.
It does feel like it wants to lean this way and go down like a cascade.
That's more like a traditional style of approach. For instance, that's maybe also interesting to tell. So with the neoclassical school, my master Kobayashi, he would go into when a trunk would go to that way, he would have a first branch going into that way and the apex as well. But that means that you don't really have balance and it looks like the trunk is tipping over. So how are you going to create balance into this tree? No, his style is like that, so you need to find a way to balance that.
How does the apex the opposite direction?
No, his apex goes to that. He styles his trees like that.
I was going to do it, I would say that left side branch is here.
I'm not talking about this tree now. No. I'm talking about a traditional school that my master did. So I'm going to talk about several schools in Japan and their stylings also. So if a trunk would lean to that way, his styling, his first branch would go to that way, his apex as well, but how would he create balance into this tree?
Strong Nabari on the other side?
No, by using a bigger pot and a more the pot that's wider, or how do you say it, in height. Yeah. Well, for instance, Ryan Neal, he would create a diagonal line between life and death, and also use a bigger pot. While, for instance, what Kimura does, when a trunk line goes to there, he will have a branch going to there to create balance into the tree. And that's a different kind of styling. Okay? So, what would you guys do? Would you make a cascade out of it, something else? Lift it like this, maybe? So, or maybe use this side,
Yeah.
also a possibility.
That would be the front with a lot of Deadwood.
This one, or this one? This one?
Yeah.
Why?
Because the corner line is it's a quicker read, at least from this angle, I see it kind of pulling over kind of gracefully.
The Deadwood is more visible on this side.
I think on this side you have a very beautiful root spread. You have interesting Deadwood. The only problem is that you don't really have taper here. But I would go for more like the Kimura approach. So the trunk is going to that way, and we're going to balance the tree so that the tree looks quite peaceful. So what I would do is maybe lift it a little bit, because the tree goes to the back and it needs to come to the front as well. What I see in Japan at the kokofu is that the trees are coming too much to the front, and I have to bend down to see those branches. But maybe that's because the Japanese people are short. So, okay. I would make a tree go that way. So this branch I don't really need. It's also a little bit weaker, and I like to use to work with the strong parts a lot more as well. So what we'll be doing is, we will be lifting the tree a little bit. Maybe it's easier to use the turning table eventually. Thank you.
I know you're about done, but
No problem. To show you, I can explain about the lineal style if you want to. Do you want me to show it how it looks? Okay. So if we have the linear style, sorry about my words, my English is not that good. So the most important part is the line. And the height is very dominant in this tree. And the foliage clouds are very defined. Plus high as well. So this would look, if it would be a formal upright, so if it would be a shotgun style, it would be a very tender trunk with foliage here a lot of open spaces. Can everybody see this actually? And if you would look at the squalls in Japan, this would be looking like something with a lot of small movement, one cascading branch maybe, like here, here, like that, okay? So this was more or less the first styles in Japan that started to exist. Do we have to be vertically, maybe, or something? Then they started the volume classical school. And what would be the most interesting thing in this? What would be the dominant line of this design, of the volume classic school? The width, yes. How would the foliage clouds be?
Wide?
Wide, yes. So the foliage clouds would be very wide, plus bigger volume. So that would look more or less like a flat trunk. The foliage clouds would also be quite low. Like this. So this would be a very triangular shape. Here you would have back branches as well, but you wouldn't see the depth. Okay. This is a style. Does anybody know Marco Stamberger? He's an Italian guy, good bonsai artist. When he has a lot of big trees, so he uses this style as well. He has a famous tree called Sylvester spine called the Buddha. He uses this style in that tree. Okay. Then they would mix up these styles together, and they would create neoclassical style. Looks like something from the Matrix, but it isn't. So they would make bonsai out of 3/3, and the first 1/3 of it is called the Tashiagari. And what's the Tashiagari? I already told you.
The base.
Rule of thirds. Rule of thirds?
No, Tashigari is the first part of the trunk, so the root strap, your nibari, first part of the trunk, and your first branch. And this always needs to be visible. So the joint of your first primary branch should be visible. So that means we're going to create taper into this tree like this. Here's the first branch going to be. And we have our foliage cloud like this, okay? Then, 2/3 should be completely hidden, the trunk line, or partly? Partly, yes. Partly hidden. And 3/3 completely hidden. Yes. Okay. So more or less like. But there are some exceptions, like if you have a bunching tree, it would be different, but that's the first style, okay? Completely. Okay. And then there was a famous guy in Japan, and his name is? Kimura, okay, yes. So he started contemporary bonsai art. His founder is Kimura Masahiko. And he would say, what are we going to do with the rules? Break the rules. Break the rules. And use the rules as guidelines. Okay. Okay. So what Kimura would do is he would create balance into a tree. But if you would have like a shotgun style tree, the traditional rule is shotgun style is slanting style. The traditional style would be, if you have a trunk that way, well, not completely. That's the rule of my master, which is also a little bit traditional. But the first traditional rule about slanting style, they would create balance and have a branch to that direction, okay? So, these were very long branches, and they would grow very low to create balance. How would this part be?
Nothing on this side.
There would be something on that side, but they would be
Very minimal.
more straight and shorter to create balance into this tree. So something like this, okay? What Kimura would do is he would have this first branch at that side with his first foliage cloud. But how would he create balance into that?
Having it try to curl back around towards the sun.
I don't really completely understand that, but not really. So what he would do is he would create open spaces in his tree. And he would create balance by having more foliage that side, and his apex also a little bit more that side. So that means something like this. Okay? So with this one, we're going to more or less create a styling that Kimura would do, okay? So I wouldn't make a cascade out of this one because we don't have any taper here. We can make taper in that one, but it will still look unnatural, and this is not that. This is quite weak, so I would cut this one, and I would use this foliage more or less to get the flow to there, and then create balance into the tree with the first branch going to here. So this, instead of becoming a branch, we can make like a sort of a trunk out of it, like a double trunk tree, with an apex here, first branch here, counterbalance branch here. This branch we should bend down so we can have some raffia here, create the apex here out of this one, and some back branches. So what we will do is we're going to cut this one. What should I do with this little one?
Take it out. Take it out.
Deadwood.
What should I do with this branch?
Cut it,
It's a little weak.
And why should I cut it?
so you can see that.
The trunk line, yes. We have a talented crowd over here, I like that. So. Okay, so this one we can cut as well.
And this is our front that you're working on.
The front is going to be more or less here, yeah. It needs to go a little bit more to the front, actually. Have a look.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we have quite a nice base here, a good root spread. The tree goes to the back and then to the front again. Yes. Okay. Can you remove the bark from this one as well? Okay. So what Matthew is going to do is going to remove the bark from that, and then I will use splitters to create taper in this one. Because the Deadwood is also important to create texture in it and create taper in it as well, because otherwise this is quite a straight and ugly part, okay? Then about how we work. So when we work on a tree, what are the first steps to do when we think of a design? Are we already wiring from the start?
Branch selection.
What?
Branch selection.
Branch selection. First, I already talked a little bit about the trunk, but first we need to think about the trunk line, okay? So we look at the root spread, we're going to look at the trunk line, and we need to check about the most interesting parts in our trunk, okay? And how are we going to check the most interesting parts of our trunk? What's the first thing? What do we need?
White base.
White base, okay, good. So Nibari, oh. Is this important for every style and every tree?
No.
Which styles don't need a white base?
Fuji.
Bunjin and Bunjin and
Sometimes Cascade.
Cascade, great. I don't need to teach you anything. Which species don't need it?
Prunus.
No. Prunus is a deciduous tree, so they need it. That's it. Juniper. So juniper don't really need it if you have the Amadori one. And other species, what other?
Maybe like a larch?
Larch mostly have beautiful root spreads. Pines don't really need beautiful Nibaris as well. Okay. Next. What do we else need to create beautiful, to decide the front of the tree?
Movement.
Movement, trunk line. Sometimes we have a beautiful trunk line and a part goes to there. So then we need to check or decide if we need to bend it to create, for a tree to turn around our axis, okay? What else do we need? Taper. That's all, yeah, taper, right? What else?
Open space.
That's later, that's from a styling view.
Oh.
So, what else?
First branch.
Your branch structure. So the position of where your branches are. So is that called branch structure, more or less? Branch placement. So these are the things we need to check to decide our front, and we need to make a compromise between all those certain things. Okay? And then there are some things that are interesting but not really necessary. So is it called surplus or plus points? What are those?
Deadwood?
Deadwood, yes. What else?
Any scarring or something?
Sorry?
Some scarring or something?
Deadwood is more or less scarring, but bark. And the last one. I told you before, if it would be in an outside corner and you would have something beautiful. A branch with a lot of character, so it's a branch with a lot of movement and a character branch. Okay, so if we have all these points, we can decide, I will decide what the front is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
Mark it so we don't forget.
True, but we're going to work on this tree right away from the start, so we don't need to mark it. We know that this is the one. Would I let you wire completely every single branch? No. What would I do? So, does a branch already perfectly grow like this? No. What does it do? Does it grow like this? Okay, so what do we need to do?
Bend them.
Bend it down. But what kind of branch is this? The primary branch. So the first thing is you need to wire your primary branch, okay? And then I also can decide which secondary branches I use and which one I cut. But this depends also, like I was last time at Shinji Suzuki's garden, he let me wire every single branch and none of these branches were cut for the health of the tree. Well, for example, Matthew wants to study with Taiga Urishibata, and Tiger works in a different way because Kimura teach them this, and he works like very basic but very structural. So what he does is, he first will bend this branch down, yes? And then he will start to select them, because if it grows like this, what would you normally do when branches are growing down? Would you cut them?
Yeah.
Yes. But what happens when I bend it, create the same movement of the trunk line to make it more compact and do like that? The branches that were growing down are not growing down
They make it going up and they make it
sideways.
Yeah.
And that are the branches we need. So it's better to first bend your primary branch, create movement into that, and then the branches that were growing sideways are actually down there, and we can cut them, okay? What are we going to do with the branches that are growing up top?
It depends.
No, we use it as foliage for these branches, so we will use them, okay? How many branches do we need to make a bonsai? How many branches minimum do we need to create a bonsai?
Three.
Three? Serious?
Or you need a backward, four.
2.
4.
Exactly.
4, and in some cases 5. And that is, which ones? Start with the first one.
Primary or first branch?
First branch, yes. Second, and it's not second branch.
First branch and secondary on the first branch.
What's the second branch? So the first branch goes to that side. How do we create balance?
Opposite side.
Opposing branch.
What's this called? Counterbalance branch, okay. Next,
Back branch.
back branch, because we need, what do we need in a bonsai? Yeah, yes. And more or less the last one, but not completely, apex. And in some cases, but not all,
Dead branch.
the front branch. Okay. So, we're going to start with our first branch. I will bend this branch down. Okay? Yes.
What do you mean by the front branch?
Front branch in some cases, like Bujin doesn't have a front branch, but in some cases we have a front branch in some stylings to cover up the apex or mostly they're higherly placed, or placed a little bit higher. So the front branch exists as well.
Okay.
So for here instance, in this tree, here we have a branch and we will have a few that are growing to this direction to create a foliage cloud here, but also one here to cover this space. Okay? And when we have a primary branch and we're putting that one into the right direction, how are we going to build these branches, so the secondary one? What I mainly do is, if this is my first branch, okay, I have a foliage cloud here, one here, and one here, okay? So that they're all also alternating, so that means this one is the first one and the biggest one. Then I have one sprouting from here to have one here and one in the back to create more depth. If they're alternating, some people, they style like this. This looks like a stairway. That doesn't look natural in my opinion. While this one looks more dramatical and more natural, okay? What I do with the first branch is I create a lot of open spaces. So if my tree would be like this, we have the first corner, and the second, and then our apex here. This would be our first branch. One here, and one to the back. And we create more open spaces here. So that means I have 3 foliage clouds, and we have a lot of open space here. While with this one, we will create less open space and we'll use like maybe 2 foliage clouds. And less open spaces, but also the foliage clouds will be smaller and more defined. And then we are going to this part here, it will be even more full, and the foliage clouds will be smaller and more defined as well. And we create a big apex with that, okay? So after that, I'm going to wire a little bit now, and then afterwards I will also explain why I make my branches, or the structure of my branches go alternating as well, okay? So here we have this part what will become a first branch or a trunk line as well. What we will be doing is we will be working on this one first. And I'm going to make a basic structure, so what I will be doing, I will wire this one together with this one, and then I'm going to make my branches alternating, and this is for a reason as well, to create a basic structure, so I can always cut back to create the same foliage cloud again, okay? Okay. Maybe we can do the Deadwood later, or next circle wire, okay? And if anyone has questions about something, just ask them and we'll try to explain it. Okay.
And if you have questions, please raise your hand and wait for the microphone so everyone can hear.
Okay.
Was that tree pulled out of the ground, or was that
I think this tree was a Prostata unicorn, and I think they have taken it out of the ground. That already was growing in someone's garden. And 18 years ago, Tom Wong grafted Kishu foliage on it.
Thanks.
So sometimes we use aluminum wire, but this is mostly for deciduous trees. For conifer trees, we can use copper wire. If we use aluminum, it's best to use 1/3 of the thickness of the wire should be for that branch. And with copper wire, it should be 1/4 to have a direct size. You use gauges, or what's it called, gauges of wire. In Belgium, we use millimeters, so I cannot tell you which gauge to use because it's a bit odd for me.
If you're talking millimeters.
Yeah?
You're making too math, it's okay.
So if we wire, we need to wire in a 40-degree angle. If we wire a branch if you want to wire a branch to this side, do I need to wire it to that side or to the other direction? So for instance, if I want to wire it to this side, should I wire it to this direction or to the other direction? That way, yes. Why? To create tension, so it tightens. So it means the most tension we're going to use will be here, and it means that it's actually like a cast or something, so that we create tension there, okay? If we bend the branch down, should we wire it from up top or from the bottom? Up top, yes. And if we do it the other way around, from the bottom, okay? So when I wire, I use 1/4 of copper wire and 1/4 of wire. Then I cut back to alternating branches. So that means, I don't know if you can see it, but if I have a branch here, the next one should be on that side, then the next one on that side, the next one on that side. It is a little bit of rule for me to simplify it, to make it a little bit more easy. So that means if we have a primary branch, like that. Then every outside corner we have a branch more or less. And that it follows the direction and it goes out. Here as well, follows the direction and goes out. Then it splits into two and it grows out. Here it splits into two and it grows out. Here it splits into two, here, 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 okay? And that's how we create a foliage cloud or foliage pad, as we say so, okay? Why wouldn't I have a branch here as well? Why wouldn't I do that?
Throws off the balance.
No.
It's weaker? It's weaker?
Not weaker. What it will do is, from the start it will look like it's quite nice and we have a bigger foliage cloud, but it's better to work in a more future way. And if we don't cut it here, this will turn into a knob or a bulb, and the taper will be ruined. So I would like to work already with a very clean structure and maybe less foliage, so that the tree already has a, so that I will have less work in the future actually, because I'm quite lazy. So this will grow out after a while, and I use the rule of 2-2-2. So that means you have your primary branch, so your first branch. That one splits into two. There it splits into two. There it splits into two. It splits into two, and that's how you go ramification on a beautiful beautiful branch line. But it means that all of a sudden, what I also do is when I style them, these spaces should be more or less the same, okay? When you build them out and you spread them out like a hat. But it also means that these lines here should be more or less the same in space if you create this hand, okay? And then after a while, this foliage cloud will grow out and get bigger and bigger and bigger. But if I would cut all these, if it was going to here, I would cut it maybe to here. Then with one wire, I could wire these two and create the same foliage cloud that I had like 2, 3, 4 years ago. So I just need to cut, use one wire, and it's better for the tree and I have to use less wire, okay? Then also, what's also important is we need to create volume, because otherwise we would have a flat foliage cloud. So if this is my first foliage cloud from the side, and we have branches up top. If we have a deciduous tree, we can cut it into 1 or 2 internodes, yes? So that means that we can cut them there and we have created volume. Okay? If we have a tree like this, you can just put some movement in it and you can place it in between. So when you have two branches going here and one on top, you can put them here to create a nice, beautiful foliage line. Okay? So what we have is, we have this one here, this one here, this one here. To create that foliage line. I'll show this. So if you want to go up front, if you want, you can all have a look. Who wants? To see it a little bit. So here we have a branch that we wire. We first put it into the right position. Everybody come up front, because otherwise you cannot see it clearly. So what I will be doing is I'm going to explain you how to create a foliage cloud from the start in an easy way without using too much wire, because I wire always until the end, more or less. And then I cut back to alternating shoots. So that means I have my primary branch here. Can everybody see it?
Yeah.
Okay. I have my primary branch here. That one splits into two, so I can use this one. And then the other one should be on this side. And then the other one should be on this side, and the other one on this side, and the other one on this side. So there's one branch at the moment I cannot use. Which one is that? That one, right, correct. So because this one also creates a little bit of volume here. So to make my life more easy, and also to use less wire, because I only want to use maximum 2 wires on a branch. So that means if I have this one, I can wire it with this one. And I will cross. Everybody will say like, oh, that's a mistake. I don't care, because it looks more beautiful. In Japan, my master told me, you need to wire as attractive as beautiful, more, or how do you say it? For most aesthetic ways. Because the customer needs to buy the tree. You know, so it needs to look beautiful. And if you use less wire, like using maximum 2 wires, will look more beautiful than using 5, 6 wires for one single foliage cloud. So what I can do is I can wire this one with this one. I will cross a little bit. If you cross with small wire, it's not a problem. Then I can wire this one with this one, and this one with this one, and then it's fine, okay? So that means this one I can cut. Then what I'm also going to do is, I will not detail wire everything, because that is not necessary. You need to check in what position your foliage cloud is growing. So for instance, I'm going to make out of every single branch a small or a micro foliage cloud. And with all these small foliage clouds, I'm going to make one big foliage cloud. So that means if we have this branch, can everybody see it? There's already a foliage cloud inside of that. So it means if I'm going to pull this one, so these branches are weak and weaker and growing down, and this is growing a little bit like this. But if I turn this a little bit like that, I already have a foliage cloud on its own. So that means if I have my scissor, and I will cut this one, this one, this one, this one, I will pinch these that are growing down on every separate branch as well, these as well. So I don't know if you guys can see it, but I already create, by being a little bit lazy, a beautiful foliage cloud with using no wire. So now what I need to do is I need to use these ones to create one beautiful foliage cloud, and that's it. So it works faster, it's better for the tree because I don't use too much wire, and it looks more beautiful, okay? Like this. Okay, super. Any more questions?
So you're just gonna have one wire, or you're gonna have multiple wires?
I'm going to have multiple wires on this one, but one wire on that one.
Okay.
Okay? It makes me save time. and less wire. So if you are going to apply this technique, it will not be good for the stores here. So sorry about that.
I have a quick question. Is there any horticultural disadvantage to crossing wires?
No.
Oh.
Is there any horticultural disadvantage to crossing wires, or is it
No.
purely aesthetic?
It's purely aesthetic. Crossing wires is no problem. If it's with big wires, it's not very beautiful, and you need to let the wire bite in to create, so how I'm going to explain this in English, need to think a little bit. So biting in your wire means that the branch will be fixated. So if you let it bite in a little bit, it's not a problem. So everywhere it bites in, I remove the wire, and where it isn't biting in yet, I will leave it in, okay? But don't let it bite in too much.
That's for junipers.
That's for everything, okay? So that's, even for the cities, trees, a little bit of biting in is not a big issue. So you want this? Okay. Any more questions?
Yannick, we have at the moment, we have quite a lot of like spindly deadwood.
So?
At the moment, we have quite a lot of like spindly deadwood out to the right-hand side of the tree that's really long and
This
thin.
part, yeah.
Yeah. You know, do you see that really long, thin stuff being part of the final tree, or do you think it's probably going to go?
It will probably gonna go. What we need to do, but I don't have that much time, and I also want to finish this tree. I already explained a little bit. We need to create taper into here, create more deadwood, and maybe we can also add a little bit more deadwood in here, but this is quite static, so it would be nice to create taper, some movement into that. For instance, these ones can stay, or we can apply like a cloth with water, aluminum foil, and then with a torch we can maybe band some movement into there to make it more attractive and appealing for this trunk line as well. So now we are going to do the most boring part of demonstrations, and it's cleaning and wiring. So if you have questions, just ask. I will try to explain as much as possible.
I'll go again. What sort of pot do you think you'd be looking for this tree?
Sorry?
What sort of pot do you think you'd be looking for this tree?
Depending on the style, depending on style, you're going to think about a certain pot. So that means this is an example. So pots that fits in a circle. For what styles can you use these?
Bunjin. Bunjin.
Bunjin, right. And
If the apex is off the edge of the pot, it's okay, right?
so, you mean like cascade styles, Kangai styles?
I just learned that if it's a round pot, that if the apex breaks the edge of the pot, like that it's just slightly off the pot, that it's okay.
That's not entirely correct. If you check the trees at the cocoa fruit stand, that mainly isn't happening. So, but like bunjing that goes to that way, like for instance, shotgun style, like tree that goes to that way, you will never see in a round pot. So only bunjing styles and cascade styles, kangai styles, will be in a pot that fits in a circle. So that means a round pot, octagonal, hexagonal, square. Okay? Pots that fit in a rectangle, that means if your tree is wider, you're going to use 2/3 of this, of the width of the tree. Okay? Then how are you going to decide the height of the pot?
So the trunk.
The trunk, yes. So the trunk size, trunk trunk size is for the height. So that means if we have this one and the trunk is more or less like this, that's going to be the height of the tree. And the dominant line of this tree will be the width. So 2/3 of this we're going to use. And I would use maybe a square pot, maybe with rounded corners, but that's a different thing where we need to talk about, because in Japan they have shinjosho, and they use it also for in tokonomas. So to put it into exhibition. So shinjosho is like shin means it's very natural, and they use do you know the tokonomas with what's it called? The
accent plant.
It's not only with the accent plant, but a tokonoma is like, it's a thing where you present your tree in. So what I like to create is, because here we will create a foliage cloud, and here as well, here one in the back, and with this one we're going to make a small apex. But the thing is, here we have foliage too much, and the problem, what will happen is, I want to create open spaces between this one and this one as well. So we are going to cut a little bit of that foliage from this part of the trunk, okay? To create more open spaces. So if you can see, we've created more open spaces. We need to bend it a little bit more to there to create even more open spaces, so we have like separate kind of, but the flow goes to that direction of the tree. What we're doing to go here is we are creating a little apex here. So what you can see, if we have this one here, then one here, one in the back to create that, and now we're going to build a small apex here, so we will bring this one more or less here, these ones to the back, here we create an open space. We're going to do this in the entire tree. To create an apex, what I always do is, if we would have longer branches, and we have a start, I make the apex into something here, so this will become a foliage cloud as well. And then from these, we can build it more to that side to create taper as well, and to create an apex. But we're going to use multiple branches, and it isn't anything bad, but you create a sort of a swastika movement to create a full apex in that. A swastika is also something from Hindu and religion, so it's not a bad thing. So what you do is you create, if you see it from up top, it's more or less something like this. Okay? So that's how you can create how do I say it? A fully foliage cloud, fully apex. So if you check here, we already created a smaller apex here, and these foliage clouds. Then here, this part is kind of straight. So in the future, we maybe can add some we can maybe add some Deadwood to make it more interesting. But what we also can do with this foliage is we can try to bring this one maybe more to the front in the future, or to the back to cover it a little bit more up and to see more foliage there as well. Okay. So now what we're going to do is, this branch needs to go down, because this will become the counterbalance branch of this part of the design of the tree. And it goes quite up, so what we will do is we will maybe tear it a little bit, but to bring it down we're going to put some raffia, so it will be like a bandage for this branch, and then we will bring it more down. If we're careful, we can also split it a little bit. That wouldn't be a problem as well. Because with junipers, this is possible. So I carefully will split it a little bit so that the branch will go down a little bit more. As long as we have live vein and live tissue around here, the branch will survive.
Yannick, I have a question.
Yes.
So when you're doing the counterbalance, you're doing it with the foliage, even though you have a lot of movement in the deadwood, you're still looking to counterbalance?
Yes, definitely. Otherwise the tree would be going too much to that side. So I always like to design a well-balanced tree. So that because the flow is going to there, the trunk line is going to there, the apex will be more or less here. We have a very long branch going up in that side, so we need to create, if you would cut this, then it would be a little bit strange. You could counterbalance that with that wood as well. So if you would remain or make that wood out of that one, it could be possible as well.
But wouldn't you have so much deadwood on the one side?
Yes, that's why. That's why I want to, it's more attractive to have some green parts on that side as well. And you can cover up of the deadwood a little bit to make it more attractive. And aesthetically it will look nicer as well. Okay. Okay, you can move on.
When you cut that, did you cut a section out or just a cut? Or
In this branch?
yeah.
I just try to rip it a little bit. We can start here, and then you need to go in between here. So this part will. So what we will be doing, maybe this is interesting to film as well. So we're going to rip it a little bit out, but not that the branch is going to, if you see here. So I carefully, can everybody see it? Maybe more or less like this.
I'll come up.
Can you see it, like here? So we rip this part of the branch a little bit in the junction, so the live vein from beneath will cover or give nutrients and moist to this branch actually, so we can put it in the right direction. We will put raffia on this side and go in between, so that it will not tear any more further, okay? Because this part is very important, okay? So you have to put it here, and then you can go in between, but this part needs to be very steady, okay?
Does anyone have a clock on that?
It's 10:15.
Oh, so we still have quite a bit of time.
Yeah, we spent an hour and 15 minutes.
Oh, then we will finish this trees. Okay, nice. It's because of doing this technique, the lazy technique.
Will the raffia grow into the tree?
No. So what will happen, here it's drier, but like in Belgium it's more wet. So because it's more wet, it will rotten more quickly. And then you need to cut it away actually. Here it's drier, so here it can stay on longer. But when your branch is into the right position, you can remove it. So when the wire is starting to bite in, you can remove the wire and the raffia as well. The raffia is only for protection, and because raffia breathes. In Belgium, we used to use like black tape. It's kind of lava tape. But we noticed that in summer, when the sun was burning on it, that some branches started to die out because they started to cook or something more or less. And they don't breathe, and too much moist will stay in there as well. So I don't know if that's a good thing. In Italy they use jute. Do you know jute? It's from jute. Yeah. So they use that one. There are like strips, and you can apply that. It's easier applicable. But I like to use raffia when they're red. It will tighten when they start to dry up, and it's like a cast around your grind, so that's very important and very good. So that's why I like to use it. And because in Japan they thought about this already for a long time. So why would I use something else, you know? Some, like for instance, does everybody know how concave cutters work? What are they, like this or like this?
Like this.
The second one.
Second one, and why? Because if they're like this, they don't really cut, and you need to take more pressure. Because they're like this, they will cut in a cleaner rate, and it's better for the branch, and the branch will heal more proper as well. Do you know how to clean them? No? Because we need to clean. Actually, I clean my tools on every tree that I work on. So I'm working on one tree, I clean them with alcohol, I make them, you have these clean gums to clean them, I use that, and then I work on another tree. I don't use the RVS ones, I like to use the carbon ones because they're stronger, because they're one metal. And this is a bimetal. So what I do is I use the black ones and I oil them as well, because otherwise they tend to rust. But if you clean them, you need to check which one's below. So this one is below and this one is on top. And you always need to, if you use a clean gum with oil or with alcohol, you need to go into the direction that it's sharp then. So that means if I'm going to clean this one with my clean gum, I need to sharpen it in this direction. Okay? And then on this piece of metal you will have like, what's it called? Burrs? Yes. You'll have burrs of metal. If you just close it, the burrs will fall off. And then you can clean this direction. Okay? And that's very important because then you can use them for like 30, 40, maybe 50 years. Do you know scissors, are they like this or are they a little bit like this? Which ones?
Number 2.
Yeah, number 2, a little bit more like this. If you see them, they go a little bit like that. That's very important to have clean cuts and it's sharper. If you want to clean these, do I clean them this way or this way?
From the top.
This one or this one? No. This is the sharpening edge. So we need to, if we want to clean them, and we have like a wet stone, you use water or oil stone, and you go into this direction, and you follow the same line, or the same, what's it called?
Chamfer. Chamfer.
Yes. So you clean this line, and here you will have the burrs again, you close it, and then you can do the other part, like here, and then into that direction. If you clean it here, you will get a gap, and then they're difficult to cut. Okay?
Yannick, I know we said earlier that to bring a branch down, you put the wire over the top.
Yeah.
Can you still do that when you've torn the top like this, or do you have to come on the bottom?
No, I have to go over the top, and it's even, and it will be, I have to put it also in between actually, and then it's easier. Because this part needs to be protected, and here I still need to have this pressure on, okay? Until here. In Japanese, there are a lot of different schools. And like me and Bjorn, we also have like different stylings because we have different teachings, and I think that influences you as well. And I think it's always interesting to learn from several people because you can pick up several kinds of interesting stuff about how to grow bonsai, how to work on trees, how to do a styling, and you can develop your own style. But I think you can do this when you know how to style bonsai yourself, so in a Japanese way. If you can follow the guidelines, you can do something special as well. And there are some examples like Ryan Neal was a student of Masahiko Kimura, and Taiga Ushibata was Ryan Neal's senpai. But Taiga chose to more go into the approach of Kimura, together with the influence of his father. So he uses the balance, but he's going to make very basic foliage clouds, while Kimura does it a little bit more natural. And also Ryan Neal changed his styling and what he calls like American bonsai, but he likes to create dynamics. So what he does is, he has gone up to the mountains, he checked how the stones are growing there, so he will use like more or less symmetric pots that resemble like the mountains here in the US, but also because the trees are more shaped by wind, he will create a tree that will go to that direction. But he will create balance by using a more steady and harsh pot. And that's quite interesting. So he creates balance and composition instead of balance into the tree, or creates a more dynamic feeling into the tree. I was also in Shinji Suzuki's garden, and Shinji Suzuki, he likes to go to that way with the trunk and with the foliage and with the apex, but his son studied at Kimura as well. And they sometimes had some discussions about how to style a tree because his son wanted to go to that direction. And sometimes he didn't listen and do his thing. So. For instance, Bjorn was a student at Fujikawa's. And what Fujikawa is, he makes very static foliage clouds. So he makes triangular foliage clouds. And the technique is done properly, so it's not a bad or a good thing. It's just different because he thinks, he creates bonsai like that and it's his story. So what he does is when he creates foliage clouds, he makes like a very clean triangular shape. Bjorn, in his first days in Japan, he had to do the same until he was finished with his school, and then he created a more dynamic shape like this and creating foliage clouds. But this is also a perception of, if you look at Kokofu books and how these trees are styled, this is also a perception of what the owner wants to tell. So for instance, if you stand on a mountain and you look at the tree from bird's view or bird's eye view, what do they call it? You will see more or less the foliage cloud, but not the branch structure. And sometimes in trees on the Kokofu, you see that as well. You don't see the branch structure of these junipers, but you see the foliage. So maybe they want to tell a story that you're up in the mountain and you're looking down on the tree. And you have this impressive juniper with a lot of deadwood and you're looking at it. While in some cases, they will lift the foliage a little bit more to see this beautiful branch structure. And it means that maybe the tree is higher than you and you can look into the branch structure. So everything depends what story you want to tell about this tree. I think that's quite an interesting case. Like with some deciduous trees, they say like that in Europe they have made this natural style of deciduous trees, how they grow. But actually this already existed in Japan because you have Shimizu-san. Shimizu-san is a Japanese guy who waters his deciduous trees 9 times a day to create very beautiful root bases. And he has these stirax, you know stirax? It has like flowers, like bells, beautiful bells, but the branch structure goes like this, very beautiful. So in Japan it's also a perception of what you think is natural or what your master thinks is natural. And I think this is very important and interesting to discuss, to know that like Japanese style is not always making foliage clouds. They do it with some trees, and I think if it fits with the tree, you can stick with that. If natural style fits with the tree, you can go for more natural style.
On the raffia, were you weaving it or putting knots in there?
No, I was just making sure I overlap the raffia. So like with the raffia, you get these thick strands that you can like lay out into like a layer. So I just try to make sure that I overlap in about 30% each time I go around.
It's very important that you don't have any holes into it, because otherwise the branch can still snap. So it's very important that it overlaps and there are no open spaces, because it's like if you break your bones, it's like a cast. So it protects the branch and it protects when you're making a corner that it's, the wire does the same actually. So when you're bending this part, your wire will be on here, so this part will not snap and it will hold it together.
I have a question about the diagonal that we were talking about. In this country, we have a lot of signs where we put the diagonal to say no, no walking, no whatever, just to say not to do something. And in my photography classes, they talked about how we are so uncomfortable if our diagonal in our photo goes that direction. It causes a lot of tension, like emotional tension that you may want. But is that universal, or is that, because you talked about that in, I think it was Japan, that they want the diagonal to go a certain direction. Is it the same?
Not completely. It's like more or less like a flow. So if there's a flow or direction your tree goes to, and like if you have a tree in a tokenomic, like if the direction of the tree goes to there in your first branch as well, then you have to have an accent plan to there as well. But you will also have a scroll, and there's like a red mark on the scroll, and that will stop the flow.
I guess what I'm saying though, do they care, like, would you not turn the tree a certain direction because the flow is going the uncomfortable, in our country, the uncomfortable way?
There's not really an uncomfortable way.
Okay,
the tree is telling which side to go. Like for instance, if this branch here was more interesting and had more interesting movement to there, we might have chosen that side to go to. But then we had to cut this branch because the trunk line would be going that side. While this branch was quite weak and not interesting, and here we have more foliage, that's why we create to have more balance. It depends what school you choose.
No matter which way.
The tree will tell you
okay.
what direction you need to go to. It's not always like that way. Yeah. There are things like diagonal lines are not always good in bonsai. So what, or 90-degree lines are not always good. So for instance, if you have a trunk line like this, is that good in bonsai? Why not?
It's unnatural.
It's unnatural, and it's the same as your pot line, okay? So you always need to try to avoid to make that too horizontally. How can we solve this problem? To tilt the tree to that side, so we will have more that line. So 90-degree lines are mostly not good.
When do you think you'll put this in a pot?
I think they will put it in a pot in spring, because the tree is healthy enough, the tree will grow very well. If the aftercare is done properly, they can put it in a pot in spring.
What kind of pot do you think?
I would choose a rectangular pot, maybe with rounded corners, to give them more of a male, because the trunk is quite fat, to give it more of a male appearance. Okay. So, and unglazed. So, brown radish type of ceramic, more or less. So I'm going to avoid to crack it more open. So we'll be using a guy wire from here. And you always need to use a guy wire where it will be 90 degrees and the angle where it will become. So that means if the branch needs to go that direction, it needs to be horizontally with that side. So I can use this branch here in the back, or that piece in the back, to use as a guide wire to bend it more down, okay? I don't really have to use like, what's it called, the rubber?
Tubing.
Tubing, yeah. I don't really have to use tubing because we have Raffion here on wire as well, which are protected. And I can just put it behind this deck branch. Also, when you use a guide wire, what I always do is, you can do it. I always use like, you know a jigsaw. So to create, what some do is they will cut it up to here, and then it's more difficult to pull it down and to turn it. So I always do this. I don't know if people can see it. Like split it into directions. And then if you have your pliers, it's like I don't know if you call it like a jigsaw thing. So you can turn it more easily into the right direction. While if you cut it and turn it, it will twist or ruin the line of that. And sometimes you cannot pull more severely down. So what I mainly do is I bend, and the fibers, they will expand a little bit, and then in 5 minutes or so, they will come back together, and then I kind of bend a little bit more. I always listen, so when you hear one crack, you know it's not still the maximum, but if you hear another one, then you're at your maximum, then you can stop, okay? So, if you can check here, we already installed a part of the backside as well. What I try to do is also to create more foliage clouds into there as well, to create depth. Here we have 1, 2, 3 branches, and this is an important branch, but I want to create some open spaces as well, because this is like the 2/3 of that part. So I think if we cut this one, we will have this one in the back that creates more depth. And this one goes down a little bit more, so this one we can cut, okay? It's possible to create a small gene, but the tree already has quite a lot of genes, so we'll cut it completely.
Is there any of those you think you might get rid of as that develops, the tree
These?
develops? Yeah.
Probably that's possible. Eventually after this design, we can maybe make some interesting, but it all depends on the big one we have here. Maybe I can show you. So what we're trying to do is we are going to try to create a dynamic going into there. This one is quite big and heavy, so if we still have time, I will try to create some movement into here to create a very more tender, beautiful Deadwood. It also depends on the line, because that part has grown quite big and straight, and I think it was even longer in the future. And it was quite a good job to create the line of this one to create more movement, so more or less into here. So I think we need to make this more visible. When we bring this one more down, we can create it here also more an interesting part. And here we need to create by tapering it, so making it smaller
Are you just gonna tear at it to do that?
Yeah, so what we do is, I can show a little bit. What we use splitters, and we will crack that open.
That's pretty much why I asked.
And we will tear the fibers on.
Oh, that makes me sense.
So you create more taper into that as well. Maybe we can remove here more as well to create movement here.
So when you're doing the tearing, do you always tear back towards the trunk?
Sorry?
When you're tearing like this, you always tear back towards the trunk?
Yeah, I usually tear more from the front to create more texture in it because the front side of the tree is most important. And I do a little bit at the back parts and also a little bit at the side parts. I also don't want to make a pointy gin too much. So maybe we will add some more texture in here, or maybe like two things going like that and in the middle, because you need to check out our branch traction in nature as well. So depending if it cracks that side or that direction, the movement will look different as well. So it will look more or less like, if it snaps, it will look like, okay, like this. Because if you tear it, it takes a little bit more like that side and here it takes a bit out as well. Okay? So you need to think about that. Our branch snaps. I don't know if we have a branch here. So you always need to check how a branch will snap. So it gives a little pointy here, then an inside, and a little pointy there, and then that part. Okay. So if you can see here, we created more texture. We can remove more bark from there as well. We created more taper. I think if we had a chisel and a wooden hammer, we could eventually punch more out to create more depth in here as well, okay? Maybe we can still remove a part here, but I first want to finish the styling and then we can decide what we're going to do. And then maybe this one is quite straight as well. Maybe we can put towels, wrap towels around it, aluminum foil, and fire it up so that it will steam, and then we can maybe point that one up. So it will follow this trunk line. And then we create like a small gene here coming out of the foliage as well, but creates an extra dimension. Okay, so now all we need to create is open space, and we have these branches in the back that will create that. What we will be doing now is the apex of this one still needs to go to that direction, but we can make a foliage cloud here, because from one branch you can make multiple foliage clouds. So we can create one here, and maybe one here as well, or maybe just two and one in the back for depth. And this one we need to bend a little bit more lower, and we can have one here, one there, and then fan the apex out as well. Okay. What I also do sometimes, maybe also interesting to show. Because when I wire our biggest branch, we should always stop on top to above like this. Maybe you can show it. Does everybody see this? So I have my big wire and it moves above, okay? I always want to wire two branches together to create tension, so one needs to be wired clockwise and the other one counterclockwise. But if I wouldn't use the biggest wire as like an anchor point, and I would bend this branch and this branch, I would bend that branch, this branch would move up. So your anchor point is not right. So what I normally do is, I use this bigger one as an anchor point. So that means if I turn it around, because now you see it's still moving, you know? But if I move it now it's stuck. Because it's anchored around that bigger wire. Okay, can everybody see that? Maybe you can. So here, you see that it's anchored. I'm crossing along the big wire, and it's better for anchor because now this wire is not moving, it's locked, and that's important. Maybe someone is interested about like European species, like junipers, how they grow, because there's a difference as well, probably in the junipers here also. So we have a species called Sabina junipers, I don't know if you have them here as well. So Sabina junipers can be quite fluffy, and we have like the male flowers and then the female who creates the berries. So the berries mostly have more beautiful flowers and it's easier to create a bonsai out of that, but they still tend to get like fluffy foliage. But this means that we need to have these runners to grow out like 5 centimeters or something, and then they will create volume. While, for example, Kishu and Itogawa will first create volume, and then they will create runners. So these ones are quite easy and easy to maintain, because they already create these volumes, and when you put the wire off, the branches will stay. While these Sabinas, when you don't let these runners grow, these branches will turn into floppy floppy branches. So you always need to grow them out so that they can, how do you say it? So the branches can hold the foliage. You have this with American species as well? No? Like Utah junipers or something? Yeah. Also maybe interesting also to tell, so the bark we can push off with a copper brush, and then we can see the live veins better. So then we can also see where, how do I say it, where there are some places where we can add some extra showering because the veins are bigger, and then you can also feel where the part is dead and where it's still alive, because if you push it, you feel that there's like sap flow going. In spring you will feel that much better than now. But if you want to create an elderly looking tree, like in Japan, if you have the big junipers, they mainly don't brush the bark off the live vein, but when you have like a Showan tree, they do it as well to complement like the reddish of the live vein and the white of the Deadwood and then the green foliage moss. But it also depends on what's a hype in Japan. So sometimes if you go to cook for some years, you will see that the live veins are nicely clean, and that they put like camellia oil on it to emphasize that. And other years you will see that they didn't clean the bark so that you have a beautiful natural structure into it. So it depends what's popular. My master, instead of camellia oil, he used lipstick to make it more brighter red. So everybody has his techniques.
Could you repeat the question so that people can...
If there are any species that are not usable for bonsai that I tried, Not
not
really.
common?
Not common. There are a few species that are not really common, but some people try to do them anyway. But they're still possible to train bonsai out of it, as long as you can get the leaves smaller. But I try to simplify my life. Bonsai is already a lot of work sometimes. So, like for instance, with the Sabina junipers, what I told you about the male with the flowers, I grafted with Kisho Itogawa to make my life more easy. Because of all these flowers, where the flowers are on the tips, there will not come a new shoot. So that means I will never have a beautiful result out of that, and it will always stay quite a floppy foliage. So I think that's not quite interesting. So if I grafted with Itogawa foliage, I got a more beautiful structure, more beautiful foliage on it, so it makes my life more easy. I don't want to make my life too difficult with using too much species and species not growing too well. I like to learn about several kinds of species, like for instance California juniper, Utah juniper. For me that's very interesting, but that's because they have very interesting features that we can use for bonsai. But I tend or try to make my life more easy instead of make it more difficult. Like in Europe, there are some species that are more difficult. You have the needle, it's Juniper communis, and you have the blue type and the green type, and one of those is not that easy. But the thing is also people repot them too early, so they tend to die. As well as for instance, Mugo is a very beautiful species for bonsai in Europe. We have a lot of incredible Yamadoris, but the Swiss version is more easy than the Italian version. But it's also because people want to repot them too fast. They don't like to repot, and especially not with a pine you cannot repot them so that you can remove the core. So you need to do that in steps. So you need to think about those things, and a lot of people are not aware of that. Bonsai is also quite of an addiction, so a lot of students of mine, they want to try, or they want to buy a lot of trees, and that's a good thing, but you also need to maintain it. So I tell them like 25 trees maximum, and then you still have a lot of work to do. So having 100 or 200 trees is not. Sorry guys, if someone's wife's listening.
Now that this tree is almost finished, at least for today, is there anywhere on this tree that you're looking at and you're saying, oh, I really wish I had a branch here, or I wish, this was a little longer, or I need to grow it out more?
Not really, because what we need to create is so our first branch needs to be the biggest branch. So it could be possible that we could create more thickness in this one, especially if you would like it into a trunk. But what we can do is we can have one sacrifice or one shoot grow out, so it will turn bigger, and then we can also create, because this is quite straight, then we can also create like that with it. So we create more tension into it, and more movement, so that could be interesting. Other branches are quite in a good. I think Tom Wong did a great job by grafting it. And we don't need branches in other places, so we still need to crank the top a little bit more down, I think, because here we have an open space. But if we bend these branches more down, we will close it a little bit. We can also pull some branches a little bit more out, so that's not really necessary. So the branches are in a good spot, so I cannot complain about that. And normally it's a compromise what we need to do. So we need to compromise with the foliage that we got, and sometimes you can build a new branch somewhere. So if we wouldn't have this apex, we could use another branch, lift that up, and create. So what we could do is, if we have like a long branch like that, we could bend it and create some movement to create a new branch here. And then from a branch here, we can create a new apex because that's shorter and you can create a more interesting movement in that as well. Because this one is quite long and you can create, yeah. There's probably in the apex a branch that we need to grow out a little bit more because we have too much open space here. So I will bend the apex a little bit more down later, or maybe use a guy wire for that as well. And then we will see. In bonsai, actually, age is sometimes important, but not always. You can create age by looking or by creating mochi-komi on a tree. I know in some places in Europe and in Japan, they try to create mochi-komi or more in old looking tree by keeping it in the pot for a longer time and not repotting it too much. I don't know if some people know the green dragon of Kimura. It's a juniper with it turns around 8 times around its trunk, the live vein. This tree was quite a long tree. He splitted the Deadwood and the live vein that were quite long. He turned around in the pot. And he shortened the tree with that, and it has a lot of live vein. So the value of this tree is going up a lot. But also...
That's Kimura's tree?
Yeah. But also, he creates a lot of mochi-komi with this tree because I think it's only been repotted one or two times in its entire life of bonsai. So. Still need to wire a few branches, and now I'm going to make some adjustments. Afterwards, I'm also going to use my cell phone because my eyes can't see everything. So what I will do is I will use my cell phone to make a picture of it, and then I can make some adjustments. Bonsai is not 2D, but 3D or even 4D. So I think it's important to see every single line and every single branch so we can make a replication of this movement again. Okay? And when I take my cell phone and I look in the picture, then I can see better if my depth is in the right position, if my first branch is in the right position and everything. Okay?
One of the things I forgot to announce is this tree that Yannick is working on is going to be donated to the Japanese Friendship Garden. So when it's done, it will end up being potted next spring when it's time. And it will go on display at the Friendship Garden with a plaque styled by Yannick Kiggen, maybe with the assistance of Matthew Velasquez. We'll see, I don't know. Maybe.
That definitely.
With today's date. And the tree that Bjorn is going to work on over there will go back to the Safari Park with the same thing, with the plaque style by Bjorn home on today's date. And again, maybe with the assistance of Matthew Velasquez. I'm not sure on that part yet. Maybe. So the club purchased this tree from Tom Wong, as I mentioned earlier. He grafted it 18 years ago at Kishu Shimpaku. And we're donating it to Japanese Friendship Garden for display there. So, no, you can't buy it unless you give me lots and lots of money. Maybe not even then.
The branches that you snap off, can they regrow again?
Yes, sure. So junipers know that you can easily propagate them. So if you would use a branch like this, and you would, if you have a knife or something,
Yeah.
you can take a piece out from here, then from here, and you would just use like small grains of akadama or root and cutting soap. You can put them in.
No water, right? No water.
You need to use water, of course. They need moist, and also you need to spray the foliage. And it's even easier if you put them in a greenhouse and mist that greenhouse a couple of times, like maybe 3-4 times a day or something. Then, because a juniper lives mostly from its foliage, so that's the easy way to do. And you need to mist the foliage until they start to get roots, and then you can mist them a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit less.
Thank you.
Okay. It's very interesting because with these you can make like interesting showing trees but it depends. So what you need to do is if you put them in like a proper soil, so first small grains, then they get roots, you let them grow a little bit longer, like this size. Then you can put them in a colander, like a fish pond with all the holes in, because then you need to give a lot of water and a lot of fertilizer, and then it will grow a lot. But what I mainly do is, I use big grains of soil, but I check what my goal is on the tree, because my goal from the first repotting until the second repotting will not change. And if I have a small tree like this and I want it to become bigger, what do I need to do? What?
Let it grow in
Let,
bigger container.
yeah, so you can use a colander or a bigger container. But my goal is to grow. Do I need big grains of soil or small grains? Big. Why? Because it needs to grow. So everything depends on your goal. So if this is a room full of basketballs, what do roots need? What do roots need? Oxygen, water, and nutrients. So if this room here is filled with basketballs with all the same size, I got air pockets, but they're all the same size, okay? And when we give water, we create gravity water, and that means that water goes to our bottom and through our drainage walls. So it runs through. But water will stay here as well. Do the roots take that? No. What kind of soil do we use? Or substrate? Akadama. Why do we use akadama? It retains water, so it does CEC, and that means that it's cage exchange, so it will take up the water and it will take up the nutrients and it will give it to the feeder roots. Okay. I only use two types of soils, like akadama and pumice, because I want to make my life more easy. I can use different stuff as well, but then I need to sieve everything and it's a lot of work. So I know in Japan they use this as well, so I will use it also. So I use the same size of grains in my entire pot because I will have the same earth spaces. So if my intention is for the tree to grow, I use bigger grains because the air pockets will be bigger and the roots will become bigger as well. But also mean that I need to give a lot more water because it's in a colander, and I can give a lot more nutrients as well. So fertilizer. Then also, why do we use akadama, and akadama has this shape like this? Why doesn't it have like a rounded shape? Sorry?
Surface area.
Surface, yes. So this has more surface, so that means it will hold more water than this, because it's the same as like a resin and a grape. This is already stuffed with water, and a grape is without water. So if you would stuff that with water, it will be bigger. So it has bigger surface area. Why do we use pumice? Oxygen, but also for drainage. Pumice mostly, if you put pumice in water, it will mostly float. So that's good for the drainage. So you need to think about what kind of tree you have, and you need to get your drainage wide as well. For pines and junipers, I use 50-50, but this depends on how someone's life is. So if he doesn't have time to give a lot of water, we can add a little bit more akadama. If he has a lot of time, we can add a little bit more pumice because he has more time to give his trees water. So this is also very important. Okay? You can also use lava, but lava retains water as well. So that's why I don't use it. But lava is good because there is a lot of iron in it, and it gives your tree a much more darker foliage. So that's important as well. What I also do in bonsai in the pot is I use for the entire pot the same grains instead of big size, medium size, and small size. Because for me that's not really logical, because I go with my chopstick inside of it, and then all the grains are mixed together, and then I have less oxygen. So depending on my goal, I will use big rains for a tree in development that still needs to get a big trunk. You use some sacrifice branches, you can let them grow, give some movement into it, and that's very important as well. If my its trunk is finished, and I want to develop branches and more ramification, what would I do? Would I put it in smaller drains? Yes, why? It will slow, because there's less oxygen, it will slow the growth down, but because my grains are smaller, you produce smaller feeder roots as well, which means also smaller ramification in the tree as well. So you need to think about your goal. Is my goal growing? Is my goal creating ramification? But also you need to think about the size of your tree. If I'm a tree in this size, do I want this small needles? Why not? Proportion. Everything needs to be in proportion. If I have a short tree, I want these small needles eventually as well. So, okay? And akadama we also use because it decomposes a little bit. But the thing is, in Europe it decomposes too fast. I think it's because in Japan they keep the better stuff and they sell the not so good stuff to our place. So that means that when I repot a tree in 1 year it already decomposes it, so that's a little bit of a shame. But in Japan it decomposes after several years, and that's important because it's decomposing. It means that the grains are getting smaller, the feeder roots are getting smaller, and while you're working your way on your tree, the ramification will go small because the tree will always tell what's happening here through the roots. So if your tree is too wet, your tree will turn a little bit yellowish, and then you know that you need to hold on the water a little bit. Okay?
Yeah, I have a question. When you're talking about the soils, do you layer them based on the type, or you just want to make sure the sizes are equal?
The sizes are equal. So I use in an entire pot one size of grains, but I mix akadama and pumice together.
But they're mixed up?
They're mixed up, yes, but the sizes are the same. That's important. So the tree is more or less finished. I need to adjust a little bit, so I can already show you. So what I mainly will do is I will make a picture of my cell phone, because my cell phone will see the shape a little bit better. And then I know what to adjust. What I like is that we here have these 3 layers and a small apex as well. And in the future I think we can make this a little bit shorter, but not for now. Maybe we could bend this one a little bit more down, because here you use a dry water or bend that is. You can dry water. So this one we can bend a little bit more down, so we will see it in this trunk line and maybe here a little bit as well. So our foliage clouds are also alternating. Here what I did is, instead of bringing this one here, because we have this one here, I brought it down to get the flow more into that direction as well. And I also need to adjust the apex a little bit, because here it turns out more to that side and it needs to be more in the middle. So you can make it like that. So maybe in future what we can do is we can create this open space a little bit more, so that we have more open space in here, because now it's still more or less in the same direction. So I think when we can put it up and then it goes too much to there, so that's not good. Or what we can do is we can bend this one a little bit more down as well. There's also a possibility. But I think it's better for future now. The overall shape is quite good.
I have another question.
Yes. Yes.
You might have talked about it before. I'm so sorry. I'm going to ask again.
No problem.
That pot is not like the nicest looking pot. If I wanted to transplant that tree to a nicer pot, how will I be able to do that?
So we already talked a little bit about that. So to have the correct size of pot, this is more or less of slanting and Myogi mixed together, and even 2 trunk of 3. All these, so Kangai and Bujing shapes are the styles that fit in a round pot or a pot that fits in a circle. So that means round, octagonal, hexagonal, and square. All the other styles are styles that fit in a pot. That's square, rectangle or oval. For this one, a rectangle pot would suit very well, and because the trunk is quite bigger, I would use a rectangular one, but the height of the pot should be the trunk line, and it should be the width of the pot or the length of the pot should be 2/3 of the dominant line of the tree. So that means this tree is more wide than the height is. So 2/3 of the foliage pass of this tree. And if you want to have like a more manly kind of vibe on this tree, because the trunk is quite big, you can use one with rounded corners or one with quite straight edges and corners. Okay? That's more or less. Okay?
How deep would you make it?
How deep?
Yeah.
The height of the pot?
Yeah.
Trunk size.
This is this steep, you don't have that tree that big, you just have a small.
Yeah, but normally trunk size will be the height of the pot. So if my trunk is more or less like this, so the height will be this. Yeah, these will be cut. These roots will be cut. No, the tree will make new feeder roots, and as long as you cut them. So what we need to do is we need to balance it. So that means we're going to reduce the root ball as well. But we cannot touch the core of the root ball. We can touch that in the future and remove parts of it and put macadamia palms inside of it to create a more hairy soil. Okay?
Would you do anything about the length of the smaller gins?
These ones? These I would keep because they're quite nice. There's this one. This one is still quite straight. So what I would do is I would take some wet towel, put aluminum foil around it, then with a fire torch I would bend it and then it gets steamed. And that means that it turns almost into butter. And then we can bend this one into the movement of the trunk line as well. So more or less like that. And I think that, sorry? This one I would keep long. This one we could maybe shorten, and this one in future I would shorten and create more texture in it as well. But it's just the first styling of this tree, so I don't want to do too much to it, and we can improve it all the way. Maybe one day Iris Bikoka will come here, and he can, because he's more of a Deadwood artist than me, and I think collaboration is quite important in bonsai. So he can work onto this, maybe sandblast it, and make the tree even more better. Because the work he does is, if I would make Deadwood, it wouldn't be bad, but if he makes Deadwood, it would make the tree 1,000 times better. Even if you have like a raw material kind of plant that's not that special, when he's working on the Deadwood, he will make it into a very good kind of material.
I think reducing that was the most significant move you made.
This one?
Yeah.
It still needs to be reduced a little bit, but I think our time is finished, and I hope you all like the result. I hope you shared enough knowledge with you.